Ladies and gentlemen, President William Ruto today stormed Eldoret in style. But one thing caught my attention. For the first time, the president was in Eldoret, but the songs which were being played during the rally were those of Raila Amolo Odinga. What message was the president and his team trying to send out to Kenyans? I'm coming back with that analysis tomorrow. But in this video, I want to talk about this particular part of President William Ruto's speech today. Only 30 seconds. Listen, then we dive in.
Mimi nitaka niwaulize, mkipima wale watu, ule sponsor wao, si alishindwa na maneno ya affordable housing? Si alishindwa na mambo ya universal health coverage? Si alishindwa na maneno ya kusomesha watoto wetu? Sasa ameenda kupanga vibaraka wake, ati anatuma hapa watu ati wakuja washindane na mimi. Hawa watu nitawaosha asubuhi na mapema, kwa sababu mimi nataka niwaulize wale watu, mumesikia mpango yao? Mumesikia ajenda yao? Mumesikia sera yao? Mumesikia maono yao? Oh, kumbe mnawajua wale majamaa. Ati mpango.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is not time for us to confront the question. Is Uhuru Kenyatta the sponsor of Linda Mwananchi? Is it true? And is there anything wrong? For example, if Uhuru Kenyatta is the force or is the sponsor of Linda Mwananchi? And why is the sponsorship by Uhuru Kenyatta is being made a subject in the Republic of Kenya? Because there's one thing I know for sure, that William Ruto is the president of the Republic of Kenya. And as the president of the Republic of Kenya, William Ruto has intelligence report, which means there is no way the president can just speak without having that information, that indeed it is Uhuru Kenyatta who is sponsoring the Linda Mwananchi. Ladies and gentlemen, in this video, I want to talk about that particular part of President William Ruto's speech. But I would also want you guys to answer me. Can Uhuru Kenyatta successfully manage to defeat President William Ruto when he could not defeat Ruto, who was his deputy, who was operating outside government, while at that time, Uhuru Kenyatta had Raila Amolo Odinga, who only needed the deep state, which Uhuru Kenyatta actually had? Can he successfully do that? Because from all indications, it is very clear that Uhuru is a man on a mission. And it's also very clear that if there's one man President William Ruto fears the most in the Republic of Kenya today, then that man is none other than Uhuru Mugai Kenyatta. And that's why people like Oscar Sudi are always on the neck of Uhuru Kenyatta.
Na wewe Uhuru, hiyo story unafanyanga usiku usema ati William atakuwa one term. Wewe utajua siku hiyo William haizi kwa one term, your blood fucking. Kama baba yako alikuwa two term, wewe ulikuwa two term. Kibaki alikuwa two term. Kwani William alikula nini ya nani? Hiyo kura tutajasa.
So for me, the biggest question is the sponsorship. One of the things William Ruto fears the most is the possibility of Uhuru Kenyatta sponsoring this team. And there's one thing I keep on repeating, that the 2027 presidential elections in the Republic of Kenya is going to be the most expensive election in the history of the Republic of Kenya. And the only person who can match William Ruto with money in Kenya today is none other than Uhuru Kenyatta. That is his biggest fear. Because Kalonzo Musyoka doesn't have the money and therefore cannot defeat Ruto. That's the fact. Because let us face the reality. I've seen Rigathi Gachagua will be in Kiambu on Saturday, and I think on Sunday he will also have another event. Sifuna and the team will be in Homa Bay for a mega political activity there. So far, I've not seen Kalonzo, which means Kalonzo lacks the money. Rigathi is not that rich. He has enough money, but I doubt if he can launch a serious presidential bid in the Republic of Kenya today. What about Sifuna and the team? That team is relying on the goodwill of Kenyans. But can Kenyans raise enough money for them? So far, Sifuna has raised around 15 million Kenyan shillings. That can only buy one V8 for the campaigns. So William Ruto knew that most of these guys didn't have the money, and therefore he was going to overrun them. But now Uhuru is coming, and that is his biggest fear. And again, if you look at it critically, there is also the shield which Raila Odinga used to offer to the president. That shield is no longer there. And Raila used to shield President Ruto from these attacks from Rigathi, from Uhuru Kenyatta. Because remember, Raila was with Uhuru, then joined Ruto. Uhuru was piling a lot of pressure on Raila Odinga to contest against the president in 2027. Raila Odinga was resisting that because one of the questions Raila Odinga used to ask, I'm told, was if this guy could not do it, how sure am I? If the mountain could not. In fact, someone was telling me that one of the things that really disturbed Raila Odinga was the fact that he did not get the number of votes he had expected from the mountain. Raila Odinga, in his mind, had anticipated to get around 30% of the votes from the mountain. So Raila used to shield the president. And now that Raila is not there, the president is really exposed. And that's why he's talking about Uhuru funding these guys to disrupt him. Let me ask you a question. If Raila Odinga was alive today, and let's assume he was still with William Ruto the way he was before he died, do you think Sifuna and the group would be moving around today, disturbing the president, giving the president sleepless nights the way they are doing? They would not have done that. That's only possible because the shield is no longer there. But importantly, there is also this Uhuru Rigathi union or alliance. That alliance is dangerous for the president, and it's what the president fears the most, because these two gentlemen are very angry and very bitter with the president. Uhuru wants to revenge. Rigathi wants to revenge. Where do they come from? They come from Mount Kenya. Why is that important? Mount Kenya has the highest number of votes in the Republic of Kenya today. And all of them are not going to run for the presidency. So which means the only motivating factor to them is removing William Ruto from office. So it's going to be very easy for Ruto to put money and persuade Rigathi to join him in that war. That is the thing which is giving Ruto serious political headache. But most people don't know that there is also the unity of the opposition. The only person who can unite, who has the capacity and the ability to unite the entire opposition in Kenya is one man called Uhuru Kenyatta. I've always told you the story of Kalonzo Musyoka, that Kalonzo Musyoka would have left Raila Odinga. So if Kalonzo Musyoka would have bolted out of Raila Odinga the way Mudavadi and Weta did, do you think Raila Odinga would have won the presidency or the number of votes he got? That would not have happened. Since Uhuru is the only man who can unite these guys, he can bring Sifuna together because he's the founder, he can bring Kalonzo, he can bring Rigathi together. If you are the president, what would you do? You would fear that man. And of course, you leave that. Who is giving Rigathi the intelligence? Who? Of course, Rigathi had or has his people. But I've always suspected that he's likely to be using the networks of Uhuru Kenyatta through Uhuru Kenyatta's own acceptance. And remember, when it comes to international networks, because you cannot become the president of the Republic of Kenya without international connections, I think Uhuru is providing this camp with that connection. And because of that, William Ruto is not very happy. I don't know what you think. Until next time, this is Lee Makwiny. Bye-bye.